Okay, fasten your seatbelts. We're going on to the fourth harf. Bismillah. So the fourth one. Maybe some of you can guess what the fourth one is. It will be talking about the letters, where he says there's a difference now in letter form, but not meaning. A difference in letter form, but not meaning. What would be an example for that? There are not a lot of them, actually. There are not many examples. There, to my knowledge, there are just a handful of types of examples, but there are, this same example or type of example is repeated a lot. So here are the two examples. The first one is the word basta, pronounced with a sad, and also scribed in the Quran with a sad. And the same word basta, pronounced with a sin and scribed with a sin. Now the word basta with a sad is also pronounced and preserved in some qira'at with the sin sound. Basta, although it's scribed with a sad. It's also might be the word, okay, let me not go there. Let's say the sad is scribed with a sad, but the same word is also scribed with a sin, as you see in front of you, in different surahs, or in the same surah, but different ayahs. But we're talking about the same word, they mean the same thing. Specifically, this, the word basta, وَزَادَكُمْ فِي الْخَلْقِ بَسْطَةً, that's in Surah Al-A'raf, and the basta, that's in Surah Al-Baqarah, okay? They mean the same thing. They're from the same root. The root is with a sin. And the articulation of a light letter sin followed by a heavy letter ta, it's in itself kind of difficult to say basta. So over time, some Arab tribes, actually the majority, started pronouncing it basta. And the Quran was revealed in both and scribed in both. So this is a variation where it's the same meaning, the same root actually, it's just scribed differently and thus also articulated differently. So this is what's meant by difference in letter form, sad versus sin, but it's the same meaning, they mean the same thing. Another example, the word rahmah and rahmat. More, this is a whole bab, this is a whole chapter in scribing the Quran. It's called Babu Ta'at, the chapter of Taz, where you have rahmah or rahmat, you have ni'mah or ni'mat, you have kalimah or kalimat, you have, I can go on and on. You have shajarat or shajarah, you have la'nah or la'nat, etc. Okay? They mean the same thing. They're the same thing, but they're scribed sometimes with a ta and sometimes with a ha. The ha is what I mean by this, the closed form. The ta is meant to be the open form that's spread out. So the first example you see in front of you would be called a ha with the scholars, and the second form is called a ta with the scholars. But they're both pronounced connecting rahmatu rabbik, okay, rahmatu rabbik in both of them. But if you stop on the first one, you would say rahmah. If you're reading by Hafs, by the way of Hafs, and you stop on the second one, you would stop with rahmat. But if you recite the Quran in some of the other recitation, you may stop on the word that's scribed rahmat, you may stop with rahmah. So now there may or may not be a difference in pronunciation, but definitely there's no difference in meaning. So this is what's meant in difference in letter form, but not in the meaning. And the letter form may or may not affect the pronunciation. As we said, the sad in some qira'at is also pronounced as seen in this particular word. Yes, it's fascinating, totally fascinating. So that's the fourth variation. Okay, fifth variation. Difference in both letter forms and meanings. Okay, so now when we talk about letters, there are three different variations. We talked about where the letter form remains the same, but the meaning is different. For example, فَتَثَبَّتُوا and فَتَبَيَّنُوا. And then we talked about the letters will have different forms, but same meaning. So exactly the opposite from the point before. And we looked at the word rahmah and rahmat. And now they're both different in form and meaning. Okay, what could that be? Here, there are not too many examples that come to mind. I'm very happy that Ibn al-Jazari provide the examples because I was racking my brain and couldn't come up with any. But alhamdulillah, he wrote it. The way I like reading books is I like trying to predict what an author might say and then compare my prediction with reality. Here, I was stumped. I had to cheat and see what examples he had. But there are not many of them, but they do occur. Okay, in Surah Ghafir, Surah Ghafir on the 3rd page, if we're reading from the Madani Mushaf, we read كانوا أشد منهم بطشة or قوة أشد منهم قوة with the ha. Okay, it's also narrated, okay, in one of the qira'at أشد منكم, and it's also proven that here I'm linking in again. Also proven that one of the Masahif Uthmaniyya was also scribed with a kaf and some of them with a ha. So this variation was documented in the Masahif Uthmaniyya, and it's also been brought to us through tawatur of qira'at. So this is a variation where the form is different. As you can see, a kaf is definitely different from a ha, and the meaning is definitely different. Minkum means from you, minhum means from them. It's a slight meaning, but the meaning, the difference is there. It's a slight difference, but it's there. Okay, the second example. This is from Surah An-Nur, وَلَا يَأْتَلِ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ. That's what we're used to reading if you're reading Hafs, where you're pronouncing the ya followed by a hamza, ya, tali. In Qira'at Abi Ja'far, his qira'ah is وَلَا يَتَأَلَّ أُولُو الْفَضْلِ مِنْكُمْ. And notice how it might use the same letters, but it's not the same. The letter form isn't the same. This is ya followed by an alif with a hamza on it, ta lam, and this is a ya followed by a ta with an alif with a hamza on it. I'm saying an alif with a hamza on it because back then there wasn't the form of a hamza, the one that you see that's right on top of the alif form. So they used to use the letter alif, that line, to represent alifs and hamzas. So that's why I'm saying it has an alif form with a hamza on it. I want it to be kind of accurate in how I'm representing the scripture of the Qur'an. So today we wouldn't call this an alif, we call it an hamza. But when we're talking about the Qur'anic scripture, this is an alif form. It's the shape of an alif. And the hamza is on top of it. The hamza was added later so that people articulate it correctly and don't say yatal unless their qira'ah implies that. So we say yatal and yata'alla, not yatal, okay? It's yata'alla. And the meaning is different. You can look it up in different tafsir. I would recommend the tafsir of Ibn Ashur because he restricts himself to the authentic qira'at, and he would definitely talk about it here because it's an obvious difference in tafsir. So this is the 5th type of ahruf or difference, where the letters have a different form and definitely the meaning is affected. Ibn Ashur is a reference only, and I wouldn't recommend someone sit and read it from A to Z unless they've gone through a bit of more tafasir. I think it's like 38 ajza. It's a huge book. It's a reference. So you would go to Ibn Ashur when you're looking at an ayah and you haven't found a meaning that makes you feel full, that's fulfilling. Go to Ibn Ashur. Ibn Ashur, At-Tabari. At-Tabari is like one of the beginning of tafasir that's mashallah really can give you a full dose of knowledge. Ibn Ashur is more modern, it's in the modern times. So there are pros to that. The cons of Ibn Ashur, he has the aqidah of al-Asha'ira. I don't want to get into it a lot. By the majority of Ahl Sunnah, it's considered part of Ahl Sunnah, but kind of on the periphery, I don't know how to pronounce that word. يعني it's debatable, kind of some Ahl Sunnah aren't really comfortable with that interpretation. So it's kind of, just watch out when he talks about Sifatillah, okay, the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when you need to be careful. But other than that, it's inshallah, it's fine. Again, it's only a reference. Muhammad Amin al-Shamqi gave corrections, very good. Gave corrections to Ibn Kathir in the grammar. Yeah, of course. Yani there are corrections to everyone. Any human work will have corrections because that's part of being human. We make mistakes and we correct each other. Alhamdulillah. Okay, so that's the fifth type of difference or ahruf. What is meant by Hamza shape? Okay, let me go back because I said it, so now I have to explain it, right? You know how we're talking about history of the Quran is oral and written? The Arabic language, when we talk about the Arabic language, there's the oral set of alphabet and then there's a written set of alphabet. And a lot of books in the modern time, they don't address that they're two different sets. So the oral alphabet is actually 29 articulations of letters with an additional 6 that are combo articulations. But there are only 28 forms of letters. This needs a course all in itself, like a quick course, maybe a 2-hour course where we talk about Arabic letters, the history of Arabic letters, and how there's the oral and the written. Okay, so let's just focus on the Hamza right now. The Hamza was articulated by the Arabs. They would say a, u, I, wherever it is in the sentence, ya'kul, na'kul, mu'min, iman, okay, the different variations of Hamza. But it wouldn't have a form of itself. Sometimes they would use an alif to represent it. Sometimes they use the waw, sometimes a ya, sometimes they would just not have a representation for it. So the Hamza is one of those letters that's articulated, making it 29, but does not have a form. So when we say there are 29 articulated letters, oral letters, but there are only 28 written ones, we're talking about the Hamza. The Hamza doesn't have, in the original Arabic, doesn't have a written form. So now what we call today a Hamza, that little thing that looks like the head of the Ain letter, that was added by Khalil bin Ahmad al-Farahidi, who died, I believe, 170 Hijri. We'll get to him. He's mentioned in our slides, inshallah. He added the form because he added also Fatha, Dhamma, Kasra, the dots and all of that. So he added the form of the Hamza so that we can tell the difference between an Alif and a Hamza, a Waw and a Hamza, a Ya and a Hamza. And when the Hamza used to just be omitted, he would add it, whether that be in the Quran or outside of the Quran. So that's why, inshallah, Brother Muhammad, I hope I answered your question with not too much information. What is the name of the scholar who added it? Al-Khalil ibn Ahmad, otherwise known as Al-Farahidi. He's also known as the father of music. Yeah, so Al-Farahidi. If you look at it, he's well known in the musical world because he's one of the first ones who wrote down and documented the different beats or meters in Arabic. Now, he was a scholar of Quran. He had memorized the Quran, and he actually had a few ijazas in Quran also. Okay, so that's the 5th harf. Now the 6th one. Now we're talking about words. So the first 2 harfs is talking about the difference in tashkil. One, the difference in tashkil does not change the meaning. The second one was difference in tashkil causes a difference in meaning. Okay, so that's 1 and 2. 3, 4, and 5, we're talking about the letters. Same letter forms, different meaning. Different letter forms, same meaning. And then different letter forms, different meanings. So now that was 5. 6 and 7 are going to talk about the words. Okay. So the 6th one, according to Ibn Jazari, the 6th harf is when words come forward or backwards. This is, I apologize, this is a literal translation of Arabic. التقديم والتأخير. And I couldn't think of a better, maybe you can help me with a better term that describes the situation. Inshallah, I'll give you the ayahs, and maybe you can help me describe it in a more original English format, other than just translated from bringing words forwards and backwards. Okay, the two very well-known examples in the Quran of full words, one forward and one backwards, are in front of us now. The first one is in Surah At-Tawbah. Okay, إن الله اشترى من المؤمنين أنفسهم وأموالهم بأن لهم الجنة يقاتلون في سبيل الله. Up until there's no bringing forward and backwards. Our qira'ah is the first one that's written here. فَيَقْتُلُونَ وَيُقْتَلُونَ. Okay, so يَقْتُلُونَ is in red here. فَيَقْتُلُونَ. It means they fight or kill others. وَيُقْتَلُونَ, the blue one, means they are fought or killed. Now the same ayah, the same surah, these same words in some other qira'at have been preserved, and they read فَيُقْتَلُونَ وَيَقْتُلُونَ. So notice the word يُقْتَلُونَ, it's now the one that's mentioned first. And the word we started with what's we know in the riwayah of Hafs, what we say فَيَقْتُلُونَ, some other qira'at, that's the second word, وَيَقْتُلُونَ. So this is what Ibn Jazari describes as bringing words forwards and backwards. So the word in red is the first word in some qira'as, but it's the second word in others, while the second word in some qira'as is the first word in others. Is there a difference in meaning? Yes, very slight. And a good tafsir to look it up is one of the original ones, like At-Tabari, or again, Ibn Ashur would be a good one for this. Another well-known example is the last page of Surah Ali Imran, where Allah mentions, what's the ayah? وَأُخْرِجُوا مِنْ دِيَارِهِمْ. What's the ayah? فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُمْ رَبُّهُمْ أَنِّي لَا أُضِيعُ عَمَلَ عَامِلٍ مِّنكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ أَوْ أُنثَىٰ بَعْضُكُم مِّن بَعْضٍ فالذين أخرجوا من ديارهم وأوذوا في سبيلي وقاتلوا وقتلوا. That's برواية حفص. So in Hafs we have وقاتلوا followed by وقتلوا. In some other qira'as it's وقتلوا وقاتلوا. Also I colored it so that you can see how they switch places in some qira'at. So that's what's intended by bringing words forwards and backwards. Again, even in this ayah, also there's a slight variation in meaning. It's not the meaning now in the certain words, it's because in Arabic language, what comes first and what comes second does change the meaning slightly in prioritizing importance or giving a series of events. Although there's a wow, the wow in general means equal in occurrence, but you have to look at the full context. So a good tafsir to give you this, the meaning, the difference in meaning, again, would be Ibn Ashur and possibly Tafsir al-Tabari and maybe Ibn Kathir, the original, not abbreviated one. Okay, so that's the sixth one.